This is lesson 2.1, use color, text, and font. Let's begin by showing you the shape hierarchy. In this diagram, node and shape are both abstract classes, and shape is a subclass of node. Underneath shape are all the JavaFX shape classes that you can instantiate. In this lesson, we'll show you how to use the text shape, and you'll learn how to use the other shapes in the lessons that follow. Now, the shape class has a number of important properties that you can use with any of the shapes that you see here. So let's discuss these shape properties first. The first shape property is fill, which is a shape's interior color. This is a paint type and can be a color or a gradient. Gradients can be linear or radial, and we'll show you how to use gradients in an upcoming lesson. With fill, the default value is black for all shapes except line, polyline, and path, where the default is null. The smooth property affects anti-aliasing rendering. This is a Boolean, and if true, makes the drawn shape appear smoother. The stroke property is a paint type and is the color drawn around a shape outline. This default value is null for all shapes except line, polyline, and path, which use black. The stroke width property is a number type and represents a square pen width. The value 0 specifies a hairline stroke, and the default value is 1. Property stroke type is an object property type that represents the placement of the stroke width. This placement can be inside, centered, or outside when applied to the boundary of a shape. Property stroke dash offset is a number type. This is the index in a dash array that corresponds to the beginning of a stroke. Now we'll show you how to use a dash array to build dash lines later on in this lesson. Property stroke line cap has enums that let you set the end cap style. This style makes the end of lines square, rounded, or butted. Finally, the stroke line join property has enums that decorate where path segments meet. These decorations can be beveled, mittered, or rounded. Now we'll show you how to use most of these shape properties in the lesson programs that are coming up. You'll want to create colors for most of your shapes, so let's show you how to do that now. With color constants, constructors, and utility methods, you can create colors like this. Here, all examples create the color red. The first example uses a built-in color constant. Note that in JavaFX there are over 200 built-in color constants that you can choose from. The second example uses the color constructor, which has 4 arguments, all doubles. The first 3 arguments are RGB values in the range 0 to 1.0. The last argument is the opacity, which has a value between 0, which is transparent, and 1.0, which is fully opaque or visible. Note that 4 arguments are required in the constructor to create a color object with new. The third example creates an opaque red color with a static color method. Here, arguments are doubles in the range 0 to 1.0. There is also a 4-argument color method that sets the opacity. The last example creates an opaque red color with a static RGB method. Here, the arguments are integers in the range 0 to 255. A 4-argument RGB method lets you set the opacity. You can also specify hex web values to create colors. Here, we show several examples with the color web static method. All examples create red colors using strings with hex or RGB values, and a 2-argument web method sets the opacity for you. So, when you want to create colors in JavaFX, make sure the opacity is set to what you want. Now let's look at our first shape, text, that defines text strings for you. Here are some useful properties. The text property is the string to display, and the font property defines the font of the text. Property text alignment defines horizontal alignment in the bounding box, and wrapping width defines a width constraint for the text. Now, if you want to underline text, set the Boolean underline property to true. Likewise, setting Boolean property strike through to true draws a line through the text. And the XY properties define the XY coordinates of the text origin. It's very likely that you'll want to set fonts for your text objects, so let's show you how to do that now. The font class represents fonts in JavaFX and is used to render text to the screen. If not specified, the default system font is used. Fonts belong to a family and have a point size with a weight and posture. Now a new font can be created with font constructors. The first example creates a default font with point size 14. And the second example creates a Verdana font with point size 18. You might also want to make your text objects bold, italic, or both. This is done with the static font method, which returns a font object. In the first example, we return a bold Arial font with point size 14. In the second example, the Times font is italic with point size 8. A couple of other things about fonts. There's another static font method that lets you set both bold and italic. With font weight, you can set semi-bold, extra bold, and others. And with font posture, you can set italic and regular. Now it's time to look at some JavaFX code. This program shows you how to create a text shape and configure its properties. We'll also show you how to use colors and fonts with text objects. Let's compile and run this program now and see what it displays. What you see is a text string with a large font displayed on a light yellow background. Note that each text string character is bold and italic. It's also colored and has a stroke width. And the entire text string is underlined. Let's look at this code now. First, a text constructor creates a text shape with the text string at XY coordinates 50 and 100. The setFont method makes the font Verdana bold and italic with a point size of 50. The setFill method makes the text characters a salmon color. To draw colored outlines around the text characters, we call these setter methods to make the stroke color dark blue and the stroke width 2. The call to setUnderline underlines the entire text string. And here's where we add the text shape to the root scene graph. To show you the importance of using strokes with our text strings, let's comment out these two lines and see what happens. When we recompile and run the program, this is what it looks like. You can see that the appearance of the text string is completely different now. Stroke widths, therefore, can be a good way to make text strings stand out if that's what you need. Let's put it back now. There, that's better. Oh, and another thing. Note that as I resize this window, the text string remains anchored at the same spot. That's because I created the text object at a specific XY coordinate and I'm not using any layouts. In later lessons, I'll show you how to resize your shapes and controls using layout panes.